Claudia Zeisberger is INSEAD's resident private equity expert. She's the academic director of the Global Private Equity Initiative at INSEAD. She's also a professor of decision sciences, entrepreneurship, and family enterprise. She's written a new book, Mastering Private Equity, and a companion casebook, Private Equity in Action. She's here to talk about the central learnings from the book. Claudia, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Claudia, my first question is, in the past we thought of private equity as a niche asset class, but the fact that you've written a book about this suggests that it's becoming mainstream. Is that the case?
Yeah, private equity is certainly no longer niche. So looking at assets under management, they have grown 4 times in the last 15 years alone, and that's just for venture, growth equity, and buyouts. If I add the more exotic private equity strategies, be it real estate, natural resources, and distressed investing, it has grown 6.5 times. So nowadays, private equity makes in the US, for example, 5% of assets that are invested are allocated to private equity. It has actually grown 3 times faster than the public markets. So aside from that, the private equity asset class has done very well in terms of returns to its investors.
And private equity investing has been around for quite a few decades. How is it changing?
Financial engineering and leverage is no longer what drives returns in private equity. So what is important these days is hands-on involvement with portfolio companies. So private equity firms are moving and changing into what we call transformation agents. Private equity houses are very interested in bringing more operational value creation to their portfolio companies. That includes, for example, questions around digitization. So to find that kind of talent, they very often look to venture funds. So I've been in meetings recently where venture funds and private equity funds actually sat around the table and looked at the various skill sets that they have that they can bring to an investee company or potentially a company that is not even an investee company yet.
And if success in fundraising is anything to go by, PE is in a sweet spot right now. Do you see any concerns?
Yes, absolutely. So we've come recently out of what the industry calls so nicely an exit super cycle. So in private equity, when money is returned to the investors, they are significantly more likely to re-up, meaning to reinvest in the successor funds. And given that valuations have been at reasonable levels for quite some time, exits were easy to do, and money was returned to investors, therefore money was also raised again. We've seen some of the largest funds being raised across the world, so not just in the US, but also in Europe and in Asia in particularly. So clearly with so much money being raised in such a short period of time, there are concerns. And the concern anchors around dry powder. Dry powder at 1.5 trillion US dollars right now is at record levels. Dry powder is defined in the industry as money that has been committed by the investors but has not been drawn down and invested yet. So it's sitting on the sidelines waiting for investable assets. Add to that a benign debt environment that is easy to come by. Think pre-2007 again. And add to that as well strong corporate balance sheets that add easily another 1.5 trillion just based on S&P 500 companies to the M&A universe. So with so much dry powder sitting on the sidelines, obviously that has led to valuations being driven up. So in the US, 10 is the new 8, referring to 10 times EBITDA in terms of entry-level valuations. In Asia, we are looking more at 15 to 20 times EBITDA. And if you look at China and add tech deals to it, we're talking 29 times EBITDA. Given those ambitious levels of valuation on entry, one wonders how private equity will manage those deals to a successful exit.
And what will the future private equity fund look like?
The component of active ownership will become more and more important. So private equity funds going forward, given the competition for viable assets out there, given the rising education amongst board members, CEOs, and company owners, especially family business owners out there, they will need to bring more than just funding to the table. They need to show that they have a capability, an operational capability that will help the business at that point in time to reach the next level. And that applies both to minority as well as to majority investors. Now, that means it's particularly important for growth equity funds, which in its nature are minority investors in fast-growing businesses, and they need to have the credibility, they have to gain the credibility, the acceptance of the majority owner, therefore bring something to the table. So in terms of active ownership of private equity will be crucial going forward. Those funds that will build the best operational teams will be the ones outperforming going forward.
And how would you describe the importance of private equity in today's financial markets?
Private equity has grown in importance significantly. And nowadays, every board member, business owner, family business owner, and senior manager is well advised to understand what private equity is and what it is not, what it can do at the various stages of a business life cycle, and at what point to turn to what type of private equity fund. Should we consider private equity when we are looking to funding new ventures or raising funds in general? And the answer to that question is yes, you should consider private equity, because if you're not, you are certainly leaving a viable option off the table. Now, will private equity be the answer for the issues that you are trying to solve? That is a different conversation. But private equity should clearly be one of the options on the table for any business.
Okay, Claudia, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.